Let's talk about love and marriage, the way that God intended. A life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. No Fruit Podcast. Will help your spirit transform.
We thank you very much for tuning into the No Fruit Podcast. We have another powerful, impactful individual today. He is the driving force behind StatGuardPlus.com, a product showcased in over 3,000 retail giants like the Home Depot and Lowe's. Alongside this success, he is passionate about understanding the difference between grit and resilience and why so many misunderstand true authenticity and identity. Uniqueness of purpose and understanding our true north identity changes everything. He is the lead coach for Dr. Andy Garrett's True North Blueprint, which helps people become the most resilient people on earth. He is working on a new book for fathers called The Guardians of Grit, How to Raise Uncrushable Young People. And in his spare time, he sings on stages all over the country. And I let him talk about who he is compared to. And those of you who knows, you know, we did our research and we listened to a little ditty he has on YouTube. and for those of you who know, Kafi and I, we met in choir. We met in church. And so for us to sing, and so we're like, oh no, we have to have this young man on our show today. And we thank you very much for coming on the show, Mr. David Osk. Thank you very much for coming on.
Hey, what a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So we would like to kind of get into a little bit about our topic for today, understanding identity, right? But teaching it from a children's perspective. But let me back up for a second. Who have you shared a stage with? Because sometimes when you talk about who you share the stage with, we don't envision that as a 2, 3, 4-year-old, right? So,
Yeah.
So who have you shared the stage with? And if you had to go back to your 4-year-old self and encourage yourself like, hey, you can do it, what would that be? And who would that be?
Wow, great question. So I'll start from an early age, if I look back, isn't it amazing how many times we don't take that next step out of fear?
Mm-hmm.
We kind of compare ourselves to others. There's all these ideas of, all the shoulds out there, that you're supposed to live up to, and, all that, just a bunch of nonsense. And, I just think, looking back, I think that fear ends up killing, a lot more opportunities than anything else, that, like this idea of the sin of comparison and so on. So I think, looking back, I wish, I probably had somebody in my corner even earlier, just being like, all right, just heck with all that. Just get out there and have fun.
Right.
Just do it. Yeah. And I think I took things maybe a little bit too seriously, for far too long and so on. But, so my musical journey, it's kind of fun, to talk about. I live in Nashville. I moved here, for music, like a million other people, right? Grew up in a family where my mom was a music teacher, and I kind of joke that we were forced to sing when we were little. My mom would tell, my brother and sister and me, get in the car, we're going down to the nursing home, and you got to stand up and sing for everybody, or in church, of course. And but I realized, early on, I absolutely loved it. It was a great social scene, and I actually had some, a unique ability in that area. And I don't want to be like a big name dropper here, but here's what was kind of neat. Even last year when Andrea Bocelli was here, I was asked to sing backup for him, when he was at the arena here. And I've sung with, on stages and backup, if you will, for everybody from Winona Judd to, Amy Grant to, Michael W. Smith. And I mean, just all kinds of folks. I got to sing in one of my favorite vocalists on earth is CeCe Winans, and I got to sing in a group backup for CeCe. And I mean, it's amazing. Over the years, I've been here quite a while. It's pretty wild to think back on, the opportunities that I've had in Nashville. There's so many amazing singers here. I've sung at the Ryman Auditorium a few times, at the Grand Ole Opry, at the Schermerhorn Symphony Center
Mm-hmm.
several times, and I'm looking at a non-disclosure agreement that I can't even mention where I sang, because they said you can't mention it publicly.
Yes.
And what's funny, of course, is nobody knows who I am, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a dude who really likes to sing, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I'm grateful to have had some, and still do have some really wonderful opportunities. I'm actually shooting
Mm-hmm.
2 videos um, on let's see, Tuesday, and I'm recording
Nice.
the song "Open Arms" by Journey. I'm
Okay.
actually recording that in Italian
Oh,
on
Yes.
Wednesday this week.
yes.
So yeah,
Interesting. Great,
So,
great.
so when you think about that, and because your mom influenced you early on, right?
yeah.
And for where you are, where you're located, as I was asking, if you had to take a step back for yourself, because your mom encouraged you to sing, but if
Yeah.
you had to talk to your younger self, how would you encourage that younger self to say, hey, you can be, you can, you'll touch places that you never even imagined. Yes, you're only 4 years old. Yes, you might think about only singing with the little mouse on Tom and Jerry, Cranbone, or something like that, right? So
Yeah.
you can't imagine nothing more than that. But if you had to talk to yourself back then and say, hey, you're going to be something else than your mom encouraging you to be, what would
Mhm.
that be?
I so what's interesting is my both of my parents owned businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I realized, maybe not even until my 30s, that there's kind of a difference between being a business owner and being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of times that we can create a job for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and own a business and so on, and they did very well at that. At the same time, I think that I was really drawn to kind of a variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, for some reason, I felt like, I just really needed to focus on one thing and,
Mm-hmm.
keep my head down. And of course, there's some wisdom in that as well, right? You
Right,
don't want to
right.
be mile wide, inch deep. At the same time, there are some, I'll just say this way, some revenue streams, that
Mm-hmm.
you can participate in that are, that don't demand as much of your time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think I wish I would have learned a bit more about that earlier on in life. And I'm
Mm.
grateful now to have a little bit of that going on, just so I have a bit more margin in my time.
Mm.
Yes.
But, time is really the ultimate currency, isn't
Right,
it? I mean,
right.
Right.
it's amazing when when every single dollar you make is tied to every single minute you work.
Right.
That's okay, especially if you love what you do. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it doesn't, it just doesn't give you much margin. So I'm grateful that I, if, just kind of branched out a little bit, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so in reference to a little bit what you said, and just wishing you would have gotten somewhere where you are now a little bit sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hmm.
as we said, we have two young children,
Yeah.
very, very young, 21 and 23.
Babies.
Yeah, I know, right?
So what words of wisdom do you give someone of that age on just understanding life now, so that you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing the shoulda, woulda, couldas
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
later on?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
advice do
Mhm.
you give to them, or even to us as parents? Like, what advice do you give to the
Yeah.
parent on what to?
Yeah. So here's something I found really in the last 6 years. So about 6 years ago, I joined an entrepreneurial group.
Okay.
It's called Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. And
Mm.
I had known about that concept,
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, but there's a law in life that's like gravity, and we often don't, um, we kind of overlook it. And I'll say it this way. I'm quoting, I think it was Jim Rohn who first said it. He said, "You become like the top 5 people you spend the most
Yes.
time with."
Mm-hmm.
And here's the funny thing, right? As parents, and you guys will get this, we understand, with our children when they're younger, especially in those, formidable junior high and
Mm-hmm.
up into, high school and so on. We don't want our kids caught up in the wrong crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we will go to any lengths. You'll see parents that will move cities because
Mm-hmm.
their kids got caught up in the wrong crowd,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? It's because we know intuitively that they will become like the people they spend the
Yes.
most time
Yes.
with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important, that our kids are surrounded, and we are, by the way, because we often don't see that for ourselves.
Right, right.
That and again, it's not that we can't participate in helping other people less fortunate. We should always be about that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as that inner circle goes, and I like this idea, spending the most time with, spend.
Mm-hmm.
There's this idea of currency exchange. There's
Yes.
an exchange happening when you are spending time with someone.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like my inner board of directors, as it were, I want it to be men who are godly, who are good and kind and noble,
Mm-hmm.
who want my flourishing, even more than my friendship. Like they're willing
Right.
to tell
Mm-hmm.
me, they're willing to tell me when I'm wrong. They're willing to tell me when I'm walking down a path that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
it's truth over opinion. And so I think that on a real basic level, we are who we spend the most time with. And then also, this idea too of like books and podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We are what we consume.
Right.
Your body, I forget the science here. Your body creates all new cells
Mm-hmm.
every like 21 days or
Yes.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about that, right? You are completely new cellularly
Mm-hmm.
every month or so. I
Yes.
forget what the date is. I need to look that up. Well, what's really fascinating though is we often again don't think about that for our minds and our spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And we are what we consume, right? If
Mhm.
I sit, and this is going to be a really drastic way to kind of make the point, but if I sit down, I'm just going to be really graphic here, by the way. If I sit down and I watch pornography for
Mhm.
5 hours straight every single day,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
and I watch horror movies,
Mm-hmm.
for another 3 hours a day, and I watch sitcoms, how about that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sitcoms where the dad is always looked at like a complete idiot.
Right.
Mhm.
The mom is the wise and strong one, which is fine. I hope she's wise and strong. But the dad is always marginalized. Like
Right.
he has a man cave and not a study, right?
Right.
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 He's the buffoon that walks into the room that even the teenagers mock.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? If we consume that nonsense and that garbage,
Mm-hmm.
we take upon that identity,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and it absolutely transforms,
Mhm.
who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really, really important to block out distraction. Even I'm talking
Mhm.
scrolling on your phone and looking at dumb videos, and
Right.
I'm guilty of that myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Send stupid stuff to my buddies. We just kind of laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, some of that's okay,
Right. Right.
but at the same time, it's like, man, what are we wanting, to consume that would
Right.
cause us to think thoughts of greatness,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts of expansion, thoughts of
Mhm.
leadership, thoughts
Mhm.
of laughter and love and nobility and courage and mission. And we were all just like every blade of grass and insect and animal and water and fire and wind was made for a very specific reason, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
were we have
Right.
Mhm.
a retina, a fingerprint, a DNA that can never be replicated, and we were made for a reason. And I love the word mission,
Mhm.
right? It's a reason, but we were sent into this world, right, from another, to be on mission. And when
Mhm.
we play that music, that's unique to our DNA, right, our spirits.
Right.
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's amazing what happens. But then again, we can cloud and cover up so much of that
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
that would cause us not to rise into the the people that God would have us be.
So you're talking about content that you're consuming.
Yeah.
So what happens to the everyday person who uses the content to babysit their children, their
Mm.
Yeah.
nieces and nephews, or whatever it is? Because I'm just gonna be honest. Hey,
Yeah.
we gotta go and we need to clean up real quick, and I need you to sit right here and watch your cartoon, right? I need you to
Yeah.
sit right here and for
Yeah.
us looking at Disney, because listen to what you're talking about. I'm like, wow, no, our kids, they did watch those type of shows where it
Yep.
seemed like the kid was in charge of everything and the
Yeah.
parents were just kind of a byproduct. So how do
Yeah.
we turn the channel? How do we, create that type of, or encourage that type of content, especially if that doesn't
Yeah.
interest ourselves? Sometimes looking in that mirror is not the greatest. So how do we turn that channel?
It's a really great question. I think on some level, it's really just this awareness, like you are what you consume,
Mm-hmm.
and quite often, right, we make a change when we don't like what we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
It's the pain, as it were, outweighs the choice of doing something different. And I would say, Ben, I sure hope it doesn't get that far,
Mm-hmm.
as it were. But I just think awareness is everything. I think that
Mm-hmm.
there's this idea of self-awareness, but then there's just this general awareness. I Who was it? C.S. Lewis, who wrote Narnia and all the
Mhm.
all the wonderful books and stories and so on. He
Mm-hmm.
said that if we call something crooked, if we call anything crooked,
Mhm.
there has to be a straight edge somewhere
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
to compare it to, right? Otherwise, everything is crooked. I mean, so it's kind of meaningless. Meaning, if I'm going to look at a sitcom or whatever poison, I mean, literally just absolute drivel and poison that's being
Mm-hmm.
pumped into our airways,
Mhm.
I have to then be able to, bounce that against a straight edge
Mm-hmm.
and say, this is why I'm calling this stuff,
Right.
lunacy.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think is really cool though is that straight edge, man, that is some powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not like we're saying no to something into and unto boredom and nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say no to that drivel into having beautiful and deep conversations with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you guys have been married 24 years. You mentioned, and I love that. Lisa and I just hit 25, and we've
Nice,
got a
nice.
Wonderful.
Congrats.
19-year-old and a 17-year-old. But some of the, not that we've done things perfect at all,
Mm-hmm.
but some of the early rhythms, that we started when our kids were young, we what's that the book Lord of the Flies, when they
Mm-hmm.
had the conch, and they whoever had the conch got to speak or whatever. So really early in our kids' lives, we would, all right, hey, family meeting, family
Mhm.
time, sit down, and we'd pick an object, and whoever had it, got to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and we would always, no one could respond, right? It was,
Mm-hmm.
they could say anything that they wanted, absolute psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm happy, whatever it might be, and all we could do is say thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of go around the room, get a pulse, because we were Team Osk. I mean, you can see my hat, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have Team Osk hats and shirts and
Mhm.
everything else, because I wanted them to know that, that hey, we sink or swim together. And I
Mm-hmm.
especially as the leader of my home, I
Mm-hmm.
want Lisa and my kids to know that there is absolutely nothing
Mm-hmm.
that they can do that would cause me to withdraw my utter delight and pleasure in them.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to know that I am for them like a hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we started a lot of those rhythms really, really early in life.
Mm-hmm.
And my son came home from college last night, came to a concert, but what I love is, he, even last night, hey, Dad, what are we doing in the morning?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because he knows the rhythm in our home is, let's go grab some Cracker Barrel or waffle. He loves Waffle House.
Nice.
Yeah.
But then, you know what? We talk about greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
We talk about
Mhm.
goals. We talk about dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about some dumb sitcom or the news.
Right.
Right.
Not
Right.
getting sucked into that. We don't do that. One more thought behind this is, do you know the author Seth Godin?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He coined that phrase, people like us do things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So this idea of authenticity and identity and so on, you
Mhm.
have to, for yourself, and again, for me as leader of my family, have an identity, meaning
Mm-hmm.
people like us do things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we literally have these things written down.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I mean, a lot of this stuff is literally on the wall at the end of our hallway.
Mm-hmm.
We have these things written down.
Mm-hmm.
My kids know that Dad, and again, I'm not perfect. I can be a total goofball sometimes, but it's, people like us do things like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And when my kids get up this morning, in Parker, he's, he's taller than me and 210 pounds and just jacked.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And my daughter, of course, is, what is she, 5 feet tall and just adorable, and she's 17. But you know what? They even still intuitively, and I don't even talk about it because I don't want to stop it, if, if they think about it.
Right.
But in the mornings, they come in, we always hug,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what's up? Good morning.
Mhm.
We have a pleasant, good and kind morning where
Right.
we just start the day with love and because why? Because people like us do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to let the music from Fox News or CNN or
Mm-hmm.
MSNBC or any kind of nonsense dictate what happens inside of these walls.
Right.
And I think it's really important to have a straight edge, have that clearly defined,
Mhm.
and do something about it, right?
Yeah.
Feed.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing here, okay, and then I'll be quiet. I love that phrase, or that, I forget who said it, by the way, but you have two wolves, inside of you, and whichever one you feed will grow.
Right.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be a, I don't know, African or Asian proverb or
Proverb,
something
yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a shadow side, we have a sinful side, and we
Mm-hmm.
have a glorious and eternal side. This idea, the Latin phrase, simile justus et peccator, simultaneously sinner and saint until we die.
Mhm. Mhm.
And whichever one of those jokers we feed is going to grow.
Grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Come out.
David, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I want you to offer or let people know where they can find that type of content that you offer. Where
Yeah.
can they find that? Your website, your podcast, with your sister, all those type of things. So let everyone know where they can find you.
Well, thank you. So right now, if you
Mhm.
go to my website, if you go to davidoskmusic.com, I'll have more information there in coming months and so on. And also, you can visit guardiansofgrit.com. And I'm hoping to have my book finished sometime this spring.
Great.
All right, nice.
We
nice.
look forward to having it and seeing more of you in this wonderful book. We thank you again, like Maurice said, that you've come on and you shared so much information.
Yes, most definitely.
It was very, very on point for us.
Mm-hmm.
So just to end things out, we have one final question. And I know you shared at the top of the show that you have sung backup for many, many different artists.
Mm-hmm.
But we ask all of our interviewees this one question. If you could sing a duet, now you sang backup before, but what about a duet? If you could sing a duet with anyone in the world, living or deceased, who would you sing that duet with?
Mm-hmm.
CeCe Winans.
CeCe, yes.
I went to the Dove Awards here about a month ago, and
it was beautiful. Oh my gosh.
She started
she opened
out
the show, yes.
And I've been to several smaller events with CeCe singing, and it's just absolutely the most glorious.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't beat it.
Yeah, her voice is beautiful.
It's unbelievable. Yeah,
and it's
she's
like
the best.
the same, like from the 80s to now. Like, some people's voices like change a little bit as they get older, but hers is just so wonderful, and she's so humble. So yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Yeah. So you'll have to reach out to her. I'm sure she would do it.
It'd be incredible. I got to meet her one time at a fundraiser, and but yeah, she doesn't have any idea who I am, and I'm not sure. But that would be marvelous.
We'll make it happen. I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah, right. We're gonna put it into the atmosphere.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll look for that YouTube video to come real soon.
Right. I know, right? But David, we thank you for coming on the show today.
Hey, what a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, sure, no problem. And of course, everyone, his information will be in the show notes, the website, the book information, everything. So we thank you very much for tuning in today, and we will talk to you a little later.
This week's episode has come to an end, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.